It is 5 o'clock. Thank you. It is 5 o'clock, and I want to call Brunswick City Commission meeting work session to order. Two items for discussion. One, which is a local act to provide for a homestead exemption. Ad valorem tax, property taxes assessed by the city of Brunswick. The second point will be a discussion and presentation regarding the Department of Community Affairs Workforce Housing and Infrastructure Grant and Construction Loan Program for rentals, cottages, works housing development. Um, Moving into the first point, I just want to talk to you a little bit about some of the things that the city has been thinking about, some of that the city has been working on. We thought about the idea of a homestead exemption to ensure that we were protecting legacy homeowners from the obvious tax changes that will come to our community. We continue to grow. A homestead exemption is something that the state uses, that they uses, and at least that I believe we should have some form on a local basis. We understand that this year there was work done on several pieces of legislation during the 40-day session, and one of those was the state actually having an addendum to their homestead exemption. So that being said, understanding that there were some changes at the state level, we understand we have, I think, around 1,500 residents that are taking advantage of the county homestead exemption inside of the city. We want to do our due diligence to see what it would look like for us financially to bring the tool into the city and bring that tax relief to our citizens. With that, I wanted to open the floor for any comments or questions from the commission before we turn it over to our tax commissioner. We appreciate you being with us this evening. We want to respect your time and just thank you for having us. Anybody from the desks here want to have anything to say on homestead exemption before we turn it over to our tax commissioner?
Mr. Mayor, I'd just like to say that I continue to appreciate the commission, our thoroughness as we look at issues like this and others to affect our citizens. And so I appreciate all of us continuing to put in the hard work and the research to make sure we're making the right decision. And want to thank Commissioner Chapman and his staff for being here to share a little bit of knowledge with us. And then I know Mr. Corey's here if we have additional questions.
Appreciate that. And so I can put everyone who will be following this through on some kind of a timeline. We have a resolution tonight on the agenda, which I think will probably be amended once we get to that portion, because as many of you all know, to get a homestead exemption done, that is something that must be passed on the state level. The session has ended. I think it ended last week. So we have until January 1 to get all the information we need, ensure that we have everything figured out and that it's smart for us to do here in Brunswick before we put that resolution together and take it forward to the Georgia State Legislature starting January of next year. So with that being said, Commissioner Chapman, we turn it over to you for just some great information. And again, thank you to staff as well for being with us.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you for the opportunity to speak to this honorable council. I would like to recognize I got my deputy tax commissioner here, Alice Everett, and assistant to me, Miss Jackson. Cost me dinner at one of your local restaurants here to get them here, but they're tough. And I don't also want to recognize my class, Naomi Atkinson. She often wishes I wouldn't do that, but I've just always been grateful for Naomi, because if she hadn't kind of moved hands so I could see her paper, I might still be at Glenn Academy. Truth be regarding homestead, it is a decision that I think you make based on some pretty decent empirical facts. It's not, there's a lot of information here with it. I gave you a copy of that, of a House bill, which is and that's the one. It's a pretty large bill. They put a pretty good bit of information in it. But I think you're going to, of course, find GMA, the Georgia Municipal Association, be very helpful once they write sort of the course of action you can take with homestead. Glenn County's been fortunate in so much that some legislators introduced Scarlett Williams freeze is what we call it, but it's just a floating homestead. That amount of exemption based on values. And that's what this bill kind of refers to, that is all communities, cities, and counties can adopt that legislation. There's some timelines in it, and so. But the interesting thing I picked up in it, and of course this is not, so don't completely hold me accountable. You have an attorney that you can rely on with that. But I gathered there was like a 1 cent sales tax that you can adopt to help offset the cost of the homestead. So that's a big positive. That's sort of something that will help you in your decision making for the homestead, which, you know, all communities, including Glenn counties, because that it becomes a costly figure. And there's also some good work they did in that same bill on how properties are going to be handled in the evaluation process, and from the beginning to the end of it. Citizens are not interested. For example, your citizens particularly that don't have a homestead freeze in place or a floater now suffer the consequences of building or buying a property that may be simply rated or inflated in cost because they're coming from an area that it's a bargain, you know, but the real economic dollars here, it doesn't make sense. Of course, then the neighbors see a huge increase in their taxes, and there's very little able to do about it. So there's a lot of positives in that legislation. I did try to do some preliminary math on, I looked at existing homesteaders according to where they applied for and received a homestead for Glenn County taxes, but they're also residents, which is, you know, a specific number. And we said, what if those residents simply were given the same homestead that Glenn County has allowed at the current city millage rate? So you'd have an idea of how many dollars you would kind of not have the next cycle. And the figure came up to be $13,090,000. I kind of put it together kind of quick today, but we feel it's fairly accurate. Now we can do a little more digging into that, a little more validation with that to make sure that you get an accurate number. But that's where that 1 cent sales tax would be a big help, because it could very possibly generate some serious revenue to offset that for Glenn County. And that'd be for the city of Brunswick, and that'd be very positive. That's sort of the simple take on it. The whole process is one that you must apply for it. Glenn County has a complex, large list of homesteads, but this is completely void of the senior school board homestead. That's a total different animal. But there's a lot of little local legislation passed over the years for homesteads. You know, the income's 10,000 and less, and 62 and older, the Scarlett Williams freeze. There was a court case, of course, and there's a ruling, and so there's a very methodical process for anybody that applies for it, that they have to go through that, and then it applies to the prior year. All of that is handled by property appraisal. We used to do it, but I have the authority to determine who does it, and I chose for them to do it because property appraisal department, the Board of Assessors, make the final determination on a homestead. So if there's any discrepancies or anything, that appeal is handled by property appraisal. So I thought it was just wise that, you know, it'd be kind of a one-stop shop. The people who were going to hear the case and understand what they deemed to be accurate in the rule would also handle the application. And the application period typically is from January 1 to April 1st each year. Everything has to be submitted by April 1st. And another pretty hardened rule is you have to be the owner of the property January 1 of each year. So if you bought it in February of this year, well, you wouldn't be eligible for homestead until the following year. Any comments or questions about anything I just spoke on?
Really good information. I think the one question that I have is, I hear that the county has list several different exemptions inside of theirs, which is something that, think about the idea of how the city could do it. I think about having it being a tiered exemption as well, but that exemption kind of being built off of how long this has been your primary residence. Is that something seen before? Is that something that's ever been brought to your office or thought about?
I think that is an excellent suggestion, because we have one of the most complex homestead exemption. We recently, to back up, after 22 years, bought billing software for property appraisal, their calculations, but most importantly, we were pleased to get it for our billing and collection. So ours was 22 years old. And I often say that Mr. Haney, Green Acres, sold Glenn County that software when he originally sold it. I've never seen anything quite that difficult to work with, but we're very pleased that we got something out. And one of the things during the transition, we went live this past August, was how complex and difficult our homestead exemption. Somehow or another, somebody decided to just kind of stack them all up. You just, there's some that, quite frankly, you shouldn't be getting because you're this one.
Right.
And other communities has already handled that.
Yeah.
So what I would suggest is that, you and the county come together on that, and see if they're, and we'll be happy to be a part of it and discuss it, the property appraisal department, and see if it couldn't be kind of modernized.
Right.
That would make it better really for everyone.
Agree.
Because that's
one
a
of
great
the
idea.
things that I think being those, as you said, those stackable exemptions, which ones do you get, which ones do you don't know, extremely confusing. Us not having anything and being able to think about a program from the beginning. I know for me, I would want the largest exemption to catch those long-time homeowners. So, we've been here 20 years plus, and this has been our married property, and we've been paying taxes. And then as newer people move in, they get a smaller piece of an exemption, but they're not getting the full freights. Thank you for answering that. I appreciate you. Any questions, comments from?
For me, and I think the mayor kind of covered, I am not comfortable with doing a homestead exemption at this point. Not that I'm against it, but because we don't have enough information for it. And so with the legislation having ended the session, we have more time to consider, properly review how we're going to address this. We talked about, the mayor's about a tiered system. The commission has to really come together and really discuss this to see how that looks, how beneficial it is, what we're going to lose in revenues, how we're going to fill the gap of that loss of dues. And so those discussions have not taken place. And so to make that clear that those discussions have not taken place, as to why we're not move forward with a homestead exemption at this point, is because we still have a lot of undergirding work to do before we get to that point.
Commissioner, as you restated that, because it's good for the public to hear it, I think they're going to genuinely pleased that y'all are considering it. A lot of the seniors that we see, because they have the county exemptions in place, their tax, I mean, we're talking senior citizens, and their exemptions will pretty much, their county tax bill is $110, and then the city bill is $1,100, and they don't understand why. And so there's a time and place for everything. We often say at our office, we're a big train that moves, we just don't stop. And so as you move this forward, obviously, are, as the mayor said, restrained from the legislative process. But, you know, you have, and once a local act, this would probably be a local act. Once it's typically approved at General Assembly, it comes back. Normally it requires a vote of the people. And so that cycle realistically wouldn't be to take place until 2026. So you have the full part of this year, see if there's something you want to work out. We're happy to provide everything we can that you can make an accurate choice. I know I prefer to make them. And so we're to provide that. I have a couple other things I'll speak on unless you have other questions.
Can I,
Okay.
can I ask for clarification on that $13 million figure you gave?
Yeah, I was a little surprised at that. I had our senior analyst look at it and I said, take the current homestead exemptions that are in place now, okay, of residents that live in the city paying county taxes, okay? If they were overnight, somehow given these same exemptions where they're at now on their city tax bill, how at the current millage the city has, what kind of a financial impact would that be for the city revenue? And that was $13 million.
My question basically, we generate $0.8 million in taxes. So how does that $13 million? Is that valuation? Is that part of the DICE?
That's what, like I said, that's what she told me, at the current value of, of the properties, that's what the exemption reflected. So I'm not sure, I'd be happy to give you something more in
Yeah,
writing.
maybe that's the impact on the valuation. But
Okay,
yeah, clarification on that would be needed.
all right. And anything else? One last thing I'll say, because I know you may have other items. We did complete yesterday the sale of Liberty Harbor lots. That was something I came across that were, there was about 90 lots total. We ended up, some of them came forward and prior to the sale, but we ended up having 79 of those. They had been off the digest since about 15 years. So they were literally not being taxed. There was no revenue being collected because the process allows the former tax commissioners, if they can't sell something, knock it off to the county, they call it. They sell it to the county. Well, the county doesn't pay taxes. So anyhow, I was able to work with some friends at the Capitol and get some help with the resolution. The county attorney approved it. And we had a pilot sale. It would, the board gave me permission to sell the rest of those lots and did sell, every one of them did. And the short version of it, and I did double check this number, Ms. Regina, you're cut well over $250,000. So from some back tax, but also you'll have a little over $1 million in value next billable cycle to tax at your millage rate. So that was a big plus. We're proud of that.
We appreciate that work.
Absolutely. And the ladies here had a big part of that. Let's see, that's pretty much everything I have. Okay?
Commissioner, thank you for
You're
your
welcome.
time.
My pleasure.
Staff, I hope y'all pick a good restaurant. Take him for all he's worth. We appreciate you. City Attorney Corey, anything to add around the legal framework?
Not necessarily. That I think that what we talked about, what you've already covered today, is what I expect us to do as we move forward through the year. Probably forth a similar resolution that's on the city's agenda today. Later in the year, once we've established what type of homestead exemption the city would want to roll out and what we would want to work with the local delegation to put forth local act. There was some questions. I know Mayor Pro Tem had one earlier this year about House 1185, which then turned into Senate Bill 349. passed, but not in the sense of what it was anticipated to do. There is not going to be at the moment a rolling opt-in homestead exemption, as far as I can tell. So a homestead exemption would still require a referendum. So, we would look forward to next year having a local act. Hopefully, we would put together the language, it'd be tiered or a general homestead exemption, put that together, get sure that it's put forth, but we would need to do that resolution at the end of 24, and that it would be introduced session next year. I think it'll work to be done between
Uh,
now and then, but I think we'll get it done.
Yeah, and listen, I want to say publicly, everything here is a legislative process. It by no means everyone agrees with that exemption, or that we come to a finality and that's what we do. And so seeing us have these debates and conversations in real time, and it's important for the public to understand and to see, but also public to be able to walk with us through each step of implementing that exemption, if that's the route we decide to go. What is important for me as the mayor is for us to see us do every single thing we possibly can to protect legacy owners in this. We have people who are building all throughout, rehabbing all throughout our city. We have people who are moving quick, whether from the island or from other areas into our city and developing part of it. We're not going to say that that is a bad thing. We want smart and ethical development, but we also understand that that development changes taxable property of those who have lived here their whole lives. And so whatever we can do, whether it is a homestead exemption, whether it's scarlet and freezing those taxable values for legacy homeowners, I think the important thing we can do is do the hard work to figure out the legislation, then figure out what's sense for Brunswick. So having a foundational understanding of what it is and what does homestead in Brunswick look like. And for me, I will reiterate, it is important for me that we not have as many years as not the island, but as Glenn County. As you can see, that causes fusion, but for us to have some very transparent and clear system that's to do with how long the property has been your primary property that you have been living in and calling home. And I know the long road, I don't like that is something that can be done quick. So I'm glad we're having the discussion tonight. But I do want to open it up to any additional questions or comments before we move on to number 2, if we haven't.
One last little thing, and I agree 100% with you, Mr. Mayor. The one component that I want to make sure that we communicate to the public and we ensure that our staff executes is if we decide to move forward with a home exemption or some form thereof, that there's a marketing component, a rural education component for our citizens regarding that enrollment would happen and who is eligible. So I want to make sure that make that decision that we're serving the people that we're trying to target, and that we'll have some dedicated man hours from our staff perspective if we need to, knocking on doors and helping people fill out applications to make sure that.
Agreed. And I want to say for the base of being the public online and those who have come in, I am most positive the $13 million number isn't right. I know what math may have been done to get to the number, but we will take that work at value at current. But once there is a real assessment of what that value may be, we'll not only bring it to this commission, but also present it to the general public so that number is very clear as we can to move out the process.
Yeah.
I see we have Taylor Ritz in the house who's raised her hand, which, thank you for all your work that you've done in our tax department as well, the land bank. If there's something you want to add, we love you. If not, all right, good deal. With that being said, move on to number 2, discussion and presentation.
To address the sale of Liberty Harbor.
Liberty House.
We can't hit that, one, but he put it out there.
You want me? I'm gonna be look in the same sense as the last sale, which only included about 9 parcels, but was successful. I'll be seeking out the same type of spreadsheet. I think I shared it with everybody after the last sale, because in concept, the city is still collect. I would assume in selling old taxes, the city will be entitled to a significant portion of whatever the sales prices were for those I'll follow up with that. And he was, he provided information pretty quickly and during my last request, so I would expect the same on this.
That's $250,000. The head turned this way. You couldn't see it turning, but it made my head turn. So I need to get numbers. I need. to get
Right. I was going to say,
better
without the
understand.
details, I'd hate to speculate
Okay.
similar to the 2 million, but I would assume that that's, sales of old taxes or those past taxes in the same sense as the 9 that were last year. And it's the spreadsheet broken down would be the same, that the city would be entitled to their share of the taxes and the penalties and interest related and sold. I'll make sure to follow up.
Okay, so we can have a discussion at a later time on that.
Anything additional? Good. We'll move on to 2, discussion and presentation regarding Department of Community Affairs Workforce Housing Structure Grant and Control Loan Program for Reynolds Cottages Workforce Housing Development. Who is coming to speak to that? Hello. Mr. Farley.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, Commissioners. Foster Hayes, our Director of Communications, will be your presentation on the Reynolds Cottages and our proposal and request you. Thank you very much for the time.
Thank you, Mr. Farley.
Afternoon.
Afternoon.
That said, my name is Foster Hayes. I have the opportunity to the communications manager for Ford Brunswick, and I'm here to present today about Reynolds Cottages, a project that Brunswick has been working on, which is a workforce housing development. Here you'll see a mock-up of what the cottages would look like. This would be between 40 and 50 units. This image that you see is the Union Street view facing southwest, a property that we have acquired. To give you an idea, this is what the whole lot block would look like. And this unit that you see right here, kind of a little bit further back, that is the C that you see right here. I'm circling it with my mouse if you can, the microscopic. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what this would look like actually on the lot there. Oh, also to mention with this as well, these are really just to match the neighborhood around it. If you go out to that vacant lot right now and look around, you see a very similar look when it comes to the houses that are around. We want to emphasize that there's a front porch here. There's a door on the, so really to match the aesthetic that's already there, to just kind of to be similar to is already in place. That's super important. Also, all of these designed to be on mirrors to mitigate any flooding concerns that could come up in the future. This is a floor plan example that's been put together of different property options that would be there on the lot that you see. These are both spacious and quality products and properties that we're really proud of to hopefully potentially be able to offer to the community and the citizens here. We also have built-in washer and dryers in each of these as well for residents. This gives you a little bit more detail about our plan. It's planned to be a two-phase plan, with phase one being for sale property and phase two being for rent properties. The phase one would be 21 years for sale. It would fall between 145,000 to 209,000. 290,000 would be the bigger 3-bed, 1.5 bath, two properties, with obviously the smaller units being closer to that 185. Majority of these are going to be on kind of in the middle when it comes price. For phase two, this would be the for rent, which would be 25 units, 10 studios, 1 story, 252 square feet. And you can see the breakdown there of which of those would look like. The rents would be between $675 and $1650 per month, with the $675 being the studios, all the way up $1650 for the 2 bedrooms. The demographic for this development, you can see with rental rates and the for sale rates being less than market value for workforce. So really targeting the service industry, first responders, city employees, and then employees as well. So to talk about the specific objective of the grant that we're here about today, Department of Community Affairs Workforce Housing Program. I'll read off of this slide a little bit more about this. Georgia's amended fiscal year 2023 budget includes $35.7 million for flexible funding to support workforce development in growing rural areas. Eligible activities include essential community infrastructure needed to support new housing development, land acquisition subject to public ownership requirements, and construction finance for sale workforce housing. Works is the workforce housing funds would be awarded on a competitive basis. Projects demonstrate ongoing workforce housing needs, difficulty satisfying work needs in community regions with low unemployment, or a community or regional commitment to expand an existing housing stock. Awardees will be expected to demonstrate transformational change in workforce housing. We truly believe that the work that Ford Brunswick put in developing this Reynolds Cottage plan would meet all 3 of those objectives for the city of Brunswick. The details of the grant: an infrastructure development for rental or for sale housing with a per unit cost of $125.90. Rental properties must be affordable for 100% area income renters for at least 10 years, provide 2+ bedrooms per unit, and essential service in broadband. Maximum $2.5 million grant, no required, but leverage resources are expected. Infrastructure must be owned by city for a minimum of 5 years. The leverage resource part of that would be something such as we've already acquired the property as Ford Brunswick, deed it to the city for free for the city to then be able to hold that property to be able to opportunity for this grant. The obligation from the city is absolutely nothing besides a little staff time, as we would Ford Brunswick be overseeing engineering, the project management, everything along those lines. So a highlight and a summary of everything that I've discussed. Reynolds Cottage is a total of 46 new residential units, 21 for sale, 85 for rent, a total of 69 bedrooms, 69 opportunities to give a affordable space to people in the city. And tonight, the City Commission to approve city-state apply for DCA infrastructure grant for forced housing development at Reynolds Cottages. I'll be happy to answer any questions you'll have.
Appreciate that breakdown. Questions or from the commission?
I have a question.
Yes, ma'am.
When you're referring to the property now, does Ford Brunswick actually own the property?
And there's a separate LLC that's been set up that Ford Brunswick oversees called LLC. That is the entity that owns the property that Ford Brunswick does that LLC as well.
And that has been updated in the tax documents and the taxes as well,
Yes, ma'am, to my knowledge.
to your knowledge?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And when you say infrastructure for 5 years, are you referring to the road that you all going to in between the phase 1 and phase 2? Because I'm speculating phase 1 would be Union Street and phase 2 be whatever opposite side.
Phase 1 would be the north side of the property, and then phase 2 would be the opposite side of that. So the road in between, and Mr. Hunter, feel jump in if you have more information about the road in between. There are very specific things that the infrastructure grant is required to go towards. Do you want specifically about the road?
Or what all include as the what you refer to infrastructure?
So, excuse me, the infrastructure would be really everything underground. So water, sewer, sidewalks. There is an alley that goes through the mid property that was reactivated and rebuilt so it can be used as originally intended. My understanding too is that the existing sewer line that would serve that property that runs down the middle of it is extremely deep. So to be able to access it, they're almost going to have to run a secondary sewer line that would then drain down to the sewer line, stormwater infrastructure, street sidewalking, underground utilities, fiber optic. So really all that nuts and bolts getting the site to build would qualify under the grant.
And having this budget for 5 years, what would be the cost to the city for the infrastructure?
Zero.
Zero? You sure about that?
That's the purpose of the grant, is to fund that infrastructure specifically, but it had done through the city.
And this project be done before 5 years? How long do you think the phase 2 will be completed?
Ideally, I believe that we would hope to be complete by the year next year, so end of year 2025.
So it'll be 3 years that it will have it after its completion as those. And
Yes, ma'am.
And will the city be able to maintain those roads as well, those sewage lines and?
Yes, ma'am.
And upkeep of the road is a cost, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay, thank you.
For me, having spoken with Commissioner Saby, understanding that the commission is, well, I won't say the entire, but I'm gonna speak from my chair, that just having spoken with him yesterday, getting information about this, finding that staff has known about this for a while, that this has been discussed with this, and I'm not sure, Mayor, or anybody else. This is where I'm at. Not, I'm for the development of that property, but now having known that Mr. Hunter has been working on this, that David has been working on this, that the city manager has been working this, city attorney has been working on this, and none of this has made its way to the commissioners to know about the status, so about how this was progressing is disturbing for me, because this is on our agenda and we're being asked to consider this. And I don't make rush decisions on what I'm considering and how I'm going to move. So my yes is not an automatic, which does not mean that I'm against the project. It just means that me to now start learning about and hearing about progression of project is not comfortable for me to make a decision at this time. Having you present in this session, for me, is a start to start getting a better understanding, how it's gonna truly affect us, all of the pros and all of the cons of it. I do see the pros in it, but I need to also have my cons addressed as well, and have a true understanding and not be asked to make a rush decision on project tonight. Because this is something that the city is going to be partnering. And so for me, I need to make sure that I fully understand we're moving in space, how the city is truly going to be held liable for anything that comes into this space. I've not heard from legal regarding this and how we move in this request. So that's just where I'm at. I'm not speaking for anybody else, but from my.
Thank you for your comments. And I think that's similar to homestead exemption, how y'all shared that a lot of legwork to be done. Well, Brunswick has filled that void in doing a lot of the legwork because it's a project that we're passionate about and has been a part of our strategic vision. So I appreciate your on that.
I appreciate all you all have done.
Thank you.
Any additional questions?
I agree with Mayor Pro Tem, just, get a better understanding before making a decision.
I will ask that question again. Comment or question?
Would, Mayor, if you don't mind, just like to share some additional details about this grant. I initially learned about this grant when we attended a GMA conference in January, and have been with DCA to assist and try to get City of Brunswick access to some of these funds to help our citizens. The application was amended, the program, and we got, Mr. Hunter and I got notice just at the, I guess it was March 8th approximately, that we were pre-qualified and could actually complete the application. So I appreciate, the work staff for Brunswick has done getting to this point. I would ask that, the commission consider the deadline of April 12th that is, set forth from the, nothing city staff or for Brunswick had any control over, unfortunately. But I would ask that you just continue to consider that in our decision process. And also, I'd love our city attorney to share what the agenda item is and how that can potentially affect us and what the actual decision that we may or may not take for us at regular scheduled meeting is tonight.
Do you want me to do that now? Okay. I only learned about it in mid-March, similar when Commissioner Savy sort of notified me. So I've only known about it since about but I do know that the application is April 12th. When I viewed this and looked to do some work on, in my opinion, it's one of those things that we not even get it. I mean, at this stage, the request, when I looked at it, was to submit an application. And I think that in the past, just speaking from my set, there's precedent to say that, when there's a no match grant opportunity, it always felt like that was something that the commission would want to look into in consideration. We are 35 eligible counties that are not eligible county, but eligible, like they've identified us as a desperate need for workforce housing. When I took a look at it from my perspective and said, you got to ask first, if they say yes, then of course we've got some serious work to do. Miss the window to apply. I think that's where I came from in trying to help out push this. So right now, I think what's being asked is to submit an application, and I would somewhat compare it to, I think Garrow presented a similar type request where city staff was just seeking to apply if we would even get a grant. I mean, I don't know if we're guaranteed. We are one of 35 eligible counties. So I do think we have a really good chance. But that's where I came from and looking. So tonight's agenda item is simple, just to see if we could apply.
And just to echo Mr. Corey, my first involvement, I've had a little bit more involvement in this just simply from the zoning perspective as they've developed their plan over the last 6 months. Have been the most familiar with it, but I don't think it was unknown to most of the committee or most of the staff that there was something in development. Commissioner Savy did invite me to a meeting with DCA. We were first introduced to the opportunity to apply, and that was last week in February. based on that meeting, they encouraged us to apply very quickly. And I think Commissioner Saby, even the application itself was fairly scant. And my role in it really has just been, we need a staff listed as contact. So we haven't really been involved in the development process at all, just seizing that opportunity to potentially bring $2.5 million worth of infrastructure support into the city. So, it's until we found out that funding might be available, we'd had very little involvement.
And would like to echo the same in terms of the knowledge of the application grant. It talked about the Reynolds property being developed, but it's the application grant that came up a few weeks ago. And actually the city is just part of a kind of like the sponsor. They could have gone to other entities that are public entities, other than the city to, I guess, process this. Is not just us, it could be then some other entity that can allow the grant to go through. And this application, of course, for infrastructure is for our infrastructure, because if these are public roads, we would have to maintain and provide these services. See the grant as a positive revenue stream for us to improve the infrastructure in that area.
For entire area, not just for
That
that
block.
development. For entire area.
Well, we would have to, yes, be responsible for the infrastructure. I don't know on your question, but basically this has the application for impact for that development, but it is a public area that improving.
The discussion that I had, and Lance, he went through and addressed some of my concerns. And so with what we have now and what we're facing and flooding and sea level, and he even talked to me about the pervious surface and how they would want to, or looking to address the pervious surfaces, not to have pervious surfaces. So for me, trying to get an understanding of the total impact to that community as far as the flooding, going over with him, explaining how the flooding is affecting the city. Now, it was internally, but now it's intra floodings reaching the skirts of Newcastle and 341 from 17, but it's now coming inward into the city where it was not coming into the city. So the impact of the infrastructure there. So talking about the infrastructure, are we just talking about that specific development? I think Commissioner C was saying that they were looking to expand or extend that structure so that it would not just be specific, just that development, but it would reach a little beyond that development to address some of those needs that community currently has. So is this going to help address that, or are these just going to be specific to this specific development? Or are we also be able to use some of those funds to bring some of that area up to where it needs to be, that entire area, not just that specific development? Because understanding that whatever put there is still put a strain on everything else that's around there. And so for me, is it be just a spot specific, or is it going to be the totality of that surrounding area? Then I go on to seeing now the potential rents and lease, seeing potential purchase amounts. And so wondering how you derive these amounts to address that specific area, because we do know that development cause those properties to appreciate in that area. That's automatic. You ain't even got to start wondering about that. That's automatic. What's the average property appraisal or market value at present, and what is going to be the percentage of appreciation of those properties around there. That go into now, how are we going to move in the homestead consideration so that we're now addressing the potential of increase in those it's for me, I think the homestead and this development really for me go hand in hand. Gentrification, I'm not looking at that, because when we look at gentrification, people get, let's just put it out there, people get stuck on black and brown people. That's the only people that's affected. But you got that community, diverse community that has all ethnicities in community, and it's you're dealing with low income at area. We want to start to mixing up and causing new life come to that area, but also making sure that we're being considerate how we are actually approaching the improvement of that area. We say work housing, it's a pretty term that everybody is now throwing around, workforce housing. But when you start looking at the classification of and their ability to earn incomes and what they're actually earning, have looked at the income potential of those that live in that community, that have that community file, and have we comparably analyzed and compared the income of those people in that area at present to the sale prices of these homes are going to be, and the lease is going to be for those people. So for me, maybe I'm looking at stuff more than I be looking at it, but I still wonder about that. But because the workforce sector, because that's the buzzword in Congress and in our local state, everybody's throwing out workforce housing, but still something in between workforce housing and affordability. There's a gap in there. And so to make sure that we are adequately addressing not just workforce housing, because it's a need there as well, but there's also an affordability piece that has to also be balanced out in all of this. So that's me looking at it from my seat, and some of those considerations that I have of kind of making sure I understand, because when you show me a price 190, I mean, the average workforce around here still ain't gonna be able to afford that.
I would love to respond to a couple of those questions, if you don't mind, Commissioner. Can you pull up the side plan again? So in regards to the question about infrastructure and how we'll potentially additionally serve the surrounding community, the only I guess first issue, the only land that would be deeded over to the city that's not currently owned by the is the alley down the middle and the adjacent parking spaces. The vision with the grant dollars would be that whole strip and the parking would be very similar to the new infrastructure that the city's installed at Mayor Ross Park. It's concrete with a red pervious brick. And then additionally on the outside of perimeter around the property, you can see that there's on-street parking that would also be pervious brick. There's currently no drains, sewer drains or anything in that community or in that block. So as Mr. Hunter mentioned, the sewer line runs right in the middle of the alley. So we would add additional drainage there. If you get the rest of
To the others.
would be something that we need to discuss with engineering, because there are no sewer lines on either one of those other streets. It is a possibility though. There is no impervious in this current design. You can see the only other, the only thing impervious are the sidewalks. So you can see all the green space that's been left, including two kind of, as I call them, kind of pocket park. There's existing oak trees that are going to stay in place. The other really thing from an infrastructure standpoint is we have two water lines, one on the side and one on the west side of the property. The one west side of the property only 2 inches in diameter and serves that entire block. and meetings with joint and sewer, it's come to the decision that obviously we replace that. Our vision would be to upscale both of those pipes on both sides of it to at least 3 inches, which again, that line feeds all the way north to the community on the other side of O Street, or the residents on the other side of O. The other major component is the only fire hydrant block is on the far southwest corner. There's no fire hydrants up off of O Street, farther up Reynolds or Oregon Street. So the plan would be to run an 8-inch water line as well. And then we would install 2 fire hydrants on this block, one on that corner, and then the other one at the north side. Yep, exactly. So then now we have fire hydrant that would access again everything to the north of O Street. So very valid and important questions, and I appreciate those. And I think again, the point of this is make sure that we're fitting the whole community. And so to follow up and finalize the question about rental rates and sale prices. Unfortunately, we don't have a lot of wiggle room in terms of construction costs. Construction costs is what it is. We don't have a bunch of leverage there. But with things and opportunities, when we create our capital stack like grant dollars, the more money that we can acquire through these creative fund mechanisms that haven't been in place in the city before allows us to continue to reach those numbers. Those are currently our projections. We don't know what our cost of construction is gonna be. They fit in the parameters of what grant requires and how the state and the federal government defines workforce housing. So we're happy with that. But we want to get them as low as possible. And the only way to do that continue to go after creative dollars.
Commissioner Savia, I don't want to interrupt here, but no, you okay? Got about 4 minutes. I think we have a couple more questions because I want to start our meeting on time. 5:57. Let's jump into those next couple.
One question, I think Commissioner Sabi answered it, but your projected project costs right now for your phase 2 without grants, or do you have an idea of what?
We do, Commissioner, would you mind answering that?
It be between 6.5 and $7 million invested in that property.
Okay. And the question for Attorney Corey, I know this is just a process so they could apply for the grant, but what is the liability of the city after we are deeded the property for those 5 years? Liabilities that you could think of?
I mean, it would fall within the same scope of any other street or roadway with city. I mean, we have an obligation to maintain the street sidewalks, but it would also be subject to sovereignty. So if were any incidences, we would obviously mount several instances, but it's the same liability that we'd have on anything else.
Okay. And after these 5 years, would you all maintain the streets or anything, or still?
Yes, ma'am. After the 5, we would take over maintaining.
Okay, thank you.
They maintain the streets, the app.
The main alley or the 4 squares in the middle?
The city at the time would have the discretion to deed that back to Forward Brunswick. And if that was their thing, would be to maintain the property and reassume that responsibility.
Any additional comments?
And we don't want to, I know we got 2 minutes, but kind of thinking back process that Bill Gross went through when he did the Norwich Common development, when he did the Perry Place development. I guess kind of understanding the comparative part of that development. And I understand Bill is going to be working with you on this, so I think that's a good move. Because he has that knowledge of all of them. But I don't recall any deeding going back and
No.
on that.
He had to take full ownership of that because submitting for those low income tax credits. So he had to show full ownership of development to be able to submit the highest point value to the state to get those credits. That's not something this project wouldn't be eligible for that, so they wouldn't be able to do it. And that's.
Okay.
he still had to comply with all stormwater and utility requirements and all of that, but he has to maintain ownership of that property to keep those in place.
With that, I appreciate you.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for coming out, providing the information. With it being 6 o'clock, we will now move on to the Brunswick City Commission. We scheduled commission meeting for Wednesday, April 3rd, 2024. We will stand for our invocation and pledge. Please bow. Father God, thank you for bringing us all here together to do the work of the community. For those who pour their time, their heart, their blood, sweat, and tears, who making it a little bit better for their neighbors. Please watch over every single community up here, Dios. Please bless us with wisdom to be able to have foresight, but to also be able to really understand the totality of our community, every single corner, to make sure every person benefits from all of the work that is done here. This in your son Jesus, we do pray. Amen. I pledge of allegiance, flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We will now move on to the approval or the adoption April 3rd, 2024 regular meeting agenda, and I offer for our consideration. Want to make sure that we defer for 9 for a date not exact. But we just deferred 9. We had a robust discussion on homestead exemption, like the commissioner for coming out and discussing that with us. So I would offer to our commission. Any addendums or subtractions? I will say that again. Any
Mr. Mayor, I'll add a move, we defer item number 9 on our consider for approval agenda
Thank you.
to a date on.
Yep. Hearing the first, do I hear a second?
Second.
Hearing a second, all those in favor, by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion is in the agenda is amended. Any additional subtractions or additions? Hearing none, we'll open a motion. Yes, ma'am.
Motion to approve agenda as presented, as amended.
Hearing the first, second. Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the agenda is adopted. We will now move into recognitions and presentations and awards. Make sure I get the right here. Mr. Bravo, if you can come up to the front for us. I see you enough around the office, so I gotta come down, but I will read this proclamation in respect of you and your office continue to do throughout the city. Whereas the Community Development Block Program has operated since 1974 to provide local governments with the resource required to fairly meet the needs of the community. And whereas the Community Development Block Grant Program is among the few remaining federal programs available directed to neighborhood revitalization, economic development, and improved community facilities and services. And where the Community Development Block Grant Program provides the city of Brunswick with important and flexible assistance to meet the residents by funding infrastructure projects, address blight, increase community resource, and spearhead initiatives like the home roof repair program. Now that I, Cosby Aitchison, as mayor of the city of Brunswick, along with my fellow commissioners, do hereby recognize April 1st through the 5th as National Community Development Week and urge residents to acknowledge the value of the Community Development Block Grant Program, significant projects that rely on its funding and support.
Thank you, sir. Appreciate it.
Right. Now on to the second one. Testing my speed reading tonight. Okay, this is a proclamation recognizing April 21st through 7th as Cities United Week. Whereas city government is administered for and by its citizens, having the closest impact on our lives, offering services which promote the health and welfare of our community. And whereas city government is dependent upon a public commitment to understanding its many responsibilities facilitated by city officials, task fine-tuning public services. And whereas the Georgia Municipal Association and its member city join together to educate residents about municipal government through an annual week-long event called the Cities Weeks. And whereas the city of Brunswick is excited to celebrate its 30s week, numerous events planned featuring fun and local experience for all. Now therefore I, Cosby H. Johnson, as mayor of the city of Brunswick, on behalf of the city commission, do hereby proclaim April 21st through 27th, 2024 as Georgia City and encourage all residents, city officials, and employees to support the week-long celebration corresponding activities. Wonderful.
Mayor, can I just add that by listing some of the activities that we
course.
have planned?
Please.
Okay, so for that week, starting on April 15th, we have a Touch a Truck, which is an event where we will have city vehicles and city equipment on display. We have a Day of Giving on April 16th. Figured you've given all your taxes by then, but hopefully we'll have some giving over to do. On that day, we have a blood drive and some other activities for give. We have a meet and greet on the 17th with city officials and local committee people. And then on the 18th, we have a day of safety where we talk about car seat installation, self-defense, and gun safety. Then on Friday, we have a tour and the employee appreciation event. And on Saturday, we will join with Keep Golden House Beautiful for a cycling event. So that's our planned activities, and we do have some activity with the schools. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. We will now move on to appointments. And I have two different ones that we have to do. Two appointments for our Urban Redevelopment Authority, and then one appointment to our Housing Authority. And the first is I want to make one appointment to the Urban Redevelopment. I know Ms. Taylor, but haven't had a chance to sit down and talk to her or have a broad conversation about her, or not Ms. Taylor, but Ms. Wright, and have a conversation about her vision on this board. However, I would like to reappoint Ms. Taylor Ritz to her position that she already holds on the URA. So thank you for your service, Ms. Fendig. It's gonna be, I get used to saying, and we got to get right on all these documents. You're still Taylor Ritz here. Thank you for working, Ms. Fendig, with our land bank, but also in your space with our URA. So we appreciate it. The next one is one appointment to the Brunswick Housing Authority. That will be filled Ms. Angela Parland Richards. Angela and Richards, and we will do all we can. You're here, so we don't have to fire you, but we'll notify Ms. Richards after this meeting. She has turned in her application. She's turned in her application to me. She's turned in her application to the entire Housing Authority as well. And she comes with a recommendation of them. Moving forward, we will move on to items to consider for approval. Approval of March 2024 regularly scheduled minutes. We'll open it for
Motion to approve the March 20th, 24, the scheduled meeting minutes as presented.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second in favor, show by the sign.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passed. We'll now move to number 5, consider approval to change regular scheduled commission meeting of Wednesday, June 19th, 2024 to Monday, June 17th, 2024. I will open that for a motion. Any comment? Hearing none, we'll open it for a motion, or we can defer. I'm happy to do either.
Discussion on how we arrived at the changing of the. I thought that, but I didn't want to assume it and be left out there by myself, making an assumption. So,
Wonderful. Any additional questions or comments? Commissioner Rowe? They're open to, there's nothing that keeps us from meeting too. Yeah, it's up.
Well, because of the budget, we have to have a public hearing, and I think the public hearing was on, I'll have to look at that date, but we have to have a complete 7-day between public hearing date and the date of budget approval, and 19th was going to be our approval date. So it may be that Thursday before.
13th available date. So we would meet on June 5th, which I believe is the first hearing on.
Right.
Oh, sorry. June 5th would be the first budgetary
That's the public hearing.
And then the next eligible date for the public hearing would be the third,
No, we don't have to have but one.
for approval, sorry,
Right.
would be the 13th. Now you got me.
So I think we can make the date that Wednesday, if, as long as it says after the public hearing.
Can I ask this? As long as we aren't changing anything, can we defer this to the next meeting, have broader conversation, figure out the exact date? So if everyone is okay with that, I'm more than happy to defer this, so we can have a scheduling conversation about what would be best.
So moved.
Hearing that as first, second. Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye. All opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. And that item is heard until the next scheduled meeting. We'll now consider the purchase of a bag dump truck. Mr. Charnock.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Got a proposal in front of you to purchase a new flatbed dump truck. The purpose for this is for the authorization of the city to purchase a flatbed dump truck from Truck Centers in the amount of $115,930.30. A little background is our Public Works Department use of flatbed trucks on a daily basis to transport different soils and aggregate and other material for the city. And we currently have 2 dump trucks. One is a 1999 model and the other is a 2008 model. So and the newest one is getting close to 20 years old. So it's time to update our equipment. Facts and issues, Public Works Department published there were for proposals for a flatbed dump truck, and the RFP included minimum specifications for the truck, the dump body, and equipment warranty. We did receive 3 proposals, as you'll see listed there in front of you, and all minimum specifications. The base results are as follows. Rush Truck Centers had the low bid of $113,065.36. You see the other bids up under there, which were quite more for that amount. The department recommends purchase that vehicle from a truck at that cost of $113,606.36. And the vehicle specified in the proposed 2025 International MV 607 truck with a Cummins engine and has the Allison transmission and dump body transport equipment company. The submittal meets all the minimum specifications as I earlier and requirements listed in the proposal. The base purchase price includes a 2-year warranty on basic vehicle coverage. And we recommend as a department that we extend the engine warranty to 5 years, 100,000 miles. And if we do that, that's an additional cost of $2,265. That's, I think, very important for us to do that. So the purchase price, if we add in that additional warranty, would come to $115,930.36. And that is what we're recommending to do. Obviously, you've got several different ways we could take care of this, and the options are listed below. The proposed dump truck will be paid for with funds that are in our public works equipment in SPLOST 22. And there was $900,000 designated public works equipment. So it won't hit our annual budget. This will be part of our loss. The options, you can approve the purchase of this vehicle for $150,930.36. Use obviously not to approve it, or you could take no action. So I'd be glad to answer questions you may have.
Questions or comments?
Thank you, Rick. Appreciate your presentation. I did have one question. Do you have can you give us a ballpark, how many miles roughly these trucks are getting on them annually? Because I noticed that in your proposal received, we also had an additional option to go extend the warranty 22 months at 50,000. So I'm just curious for an extra 15 and $1,600, makes or not make sense?
Well, it's more time than mileage for these because they're not in long distances. So they're typically around the city doing short ones.
Yep.
So the time is more important than the actual mileage. We may put, 50,000 miles on that vehicle in 10 years.
Perfect.
Or you could have special circumstances, but that's the reason we didn't recommend those other coverages. I think doing that on the end, that's where the biggest expense can occur.
Yep.
We want to make sure we have ourselves protected.
Appreciate your due diligence on that.
Still use the older trucks that we have, or will we sell them?
We will end up, for sure, the 999 will be sold immediately. The 2008 will be kept for a little while, and we'll probably come before you at another time to propose replacing the truck.
Comments or questions? Commissioner Roll asked the very thing I asked in finance, so that's what I wanted to know. Any other questions or comments? We'll open it for a motion.
I move that we accept the approval of the purchase of the National M607 flatbed dump truck from Rush Truck Center for $115,930.36.
Hearing the first, second.
Second.
Hearing the first and the second, all those in favor show by the sign of aye.
Aye.
All those are the same. Hearing none, the motion passes.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Charnock. I'll move on to approval of pay adjustment for city personnel, City Manager McDuffie. Oh, I'm sorry. I apologize. That was on me.
I'll be well skip it if you will.
My mayor pro tem won't let me do that.
I don't know why, she's already heard it.
So considerable financial reports of February 29th, 2024.
Thank you for the opportunity to present the financial report for this February 29th. Let me to the top of my document. Okay. So at this time, and I apologize, my computer. As of February, our general fund was $16,890,000 in revenue, $12,156,000 in expense, for a revenue over expenditures of $4.7 million. This is 2/3 of the year, and we are operating very well and efficient at this point. Our cash balance was $13,700, which $12.4 million that was in Georgia Fund One, with $1.2 million in the Prime South account. Our loss collections for the year, $6,636,000, which is $526,000 over last year, which represents an 8.6% increase. For the month of February, the collections were down slightly, but they were over last year's collections. We collected $705,000, which was approximately 2% over last year. In the SPLOST 6, we didn't have any expenditures for the month of February in SPLOST 6. The cash on hand in that account is $258,000. For the SPLOST 22, we only had a slight increase in the expenditures in that fund. We had expenditures in the Mary Ross Park project and the Orange Park improvement projects of approximately $200,000. That funds $1.2 million of expenditures that thus our collections for the SPLOST through February was $5.1 million, with an additional $114,000 of interest earned for a $6,031,000 of receipts since its inception. Total cash on hand in February was $4.7 million. Norwich Street Commons funds, there was no activity. Cash on hand is $362,000 in that fund. The Harris had $430,000 fiscal year to date revenue, approximately, $232,000 new for the Harris Center and $215,000 expenditures. It shows a net deficit operating cost of $18,000 at the end of February, but it has a cash balance $20,000. There was very little activity of approximately $40,000 of expense in the ARPA funds for the February. All of that was recorded in the storage account. In the sanitation fund, we have $2.2 million of revenue, total expense through February of $1,068,000 for an operating income of $1.1 million. But of course, you know, most of our revenue for sanitation comes in with the tax bill, so we run ahead a few months until we expense that out by the end of the year. Cash on hand was $943,000. The waste management cost of the month was $143,000 for a total of $1,008,000 for the year. The stormwater utility fund had $1.3 million of inflow, outflow of $875,000, with the balance of $456,000 for the remainder of the year. But that GMA lease amount shows up a lump sum, so that would not be expense for the remainder of the, so fund should be in good shape at the end of June. Cash balance of $304,000. And last but not least, the Roosevelt Lawrence Center, we had approximately $6,800 of expense for a total budget of $82,785. And I had told the Mayor Pro Tem to get her the budget for that, but I do not have it in front of me. But if you give me a few, I can pull it up. That completes my report for finance. Do you have any questions?
City Manager McDuffie, can you tell me, and you may have already said this in the past, why is it that the projected, the expenditures are exceeding more than that we expected or budgeted out, or,
Where?
I'm sorry, the Roosevelt Harris Multipurpose Center, what was the cost?
Because there's a transfer from the general fund that should have been done, and it was done during February. So basically, it's because we make a transfer into that fund. If you look back at January, it was 120,500, and it's the same thing for February.
Okay. But the expenditures, but still, your expenditures for date, whenever you did your budget, what has caused expenditures to be more than you all projected?
The expenditure not more than we projected. The transfer to supplement that budget was just not made.
Okay.
Was it the Harris? It was the Harris Center? Okay, I'll look at that one.
It was that, sorry. But yeah, that's what I asked the last time.
Okay, I'll look at that one. I apologize.
Because I was wanting to know at what rate we were being reimbursed. I know we talked about the number of attendees at present and the increasing of that playing part with some of the payables that we would use from CRC and those different factors that came into the reimbursement as to the other funds that we received, and not just with the city's financial support, but how we receive those reimbursement payments from CRC as well.
Okay, and you're right. I'll need to look specifically at that fund, and I'll get that information to you.
Any additional questions or comments? Commissioner? Oh, okay. Question, three things. For those on the commission, at least I will speak for Commissioner and I Mayor Pro Tem may have met with them before, but I have never heard from Georgia Fund One or Prime South on invest strategy. Here's what we're doing. Here's how we're using those dollars. The second is important to me. I understand Georgia Fund One interest rate is clearly higher than most interest-bearing accounts. It's a small decision for our dollars to be in there. However, when I first in office, I knew that the interest rates were almost operating at a negative balance. So I would want to just know their investment strategy looks like over time to ensure that we have some understanding of that moving forward. The second is, I just believe every municipality or other should be reevaluating the bank that holds their money, at least on some of consistent basis. We've never evaluated Prime South. I know I've never had a broader conversation with them about them holding our money, their interest rates, and I would love to provide that opportunity, not only for myself, for the entirety of our commission to have a greater understanding of that. So I would love to have that, so to see if Prime South is the best we can do, that's great. But if it's not, then we need to be making sure we make the most of our citizens' money as everybody does with their own books at home. The last thing that I do want to, there is a project going on inside of the city for which funds for that project was given to the county. That project is our College Park drainage project. It is incredibly important to many, if not all of our citizens, and I know it's something that every single person here has worked to make sure that we are moving in a positive direction. I had several conversations with those who are in the neighborhood association in that area who they don't see the amount of vigor, the amount of work, and those dollars being into that project at a pace that makes sense for us to actually complete it for our citizens. Because we are not handling those dollars, and I'd like to give a shout out to Mission, do a fairly good job of putting dollars to work when they come to our coffers. Money from the state, we're doing the fields. We are using those sponsors to redo tile on other streets. So we are being efficient in those dollars coming to us and us getting project dollars out. it is questionable to me why we having that project move at a faster pace, like some kind of background or some kind of understanding of what the county is moving for that project. And if we could be joint and receive those updates, or be joint on getting that information, so we could have a conversation with our counterparts in the county to do what we can to make sure, if it's holding accountable, let's hold them accountable. If it's ensuring that something needs to be coming down from the state, and we need to make sure on that we're advocating on whatever level possible to ensure that project done at a pace that's good for our citizens. Mayor Pro Tem brings a great point up, especially with the age of the project. How long we've been thinking about it, how long we've been working on it. We understood when we first got elected that there's some piece of it's property acquisition. We know that takes a little bit of time, but time for us to get rolling, and for us, I know I want some clarity for those citizens in College Park, be able to tell them this is exactly what we're doing to fix it. So to the tune that we can get that a part of, I don't know if I want to say financials, but we can make part of the conversation around our financials. It helps us stay accountable citizens in the city. With that, I'll open it for approval of the final report.
Mr. Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the financial as presented.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor show by the sign.
Aye.
Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We'll now go into considerable of pay adjustment for city personnel. City Manager McDuffie.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I'm trying to, for some reason, it won't give me the opportunity down to that particular item. But in absence of having the document in front of me, of course, this was first discussed during our retreat, where the committee talked about making sure that we were paying a livable wage to our employees. So I did look back at our manning and determine what our minimum wage was, and looked at what we could do to increase so that our people who are working for the city are at least at the air minimum or median income. So proposing a $2 increase from our $14.90 is our lowest hourly rate to a low minimum of $16.90 for our employees, which equals out about $35,000 per year. And this will impact approximately 9 of our employees, mostly in our public works area. The total cost is for this fiscal year, since we only have 2 months, and I'm out for it to be effective as of May 1st. The total cost this year, the salary and benefits, would be approximately $37,000. The total cost going forward is about $190,000, and that's just adding those wages into the normal budget process for the upcoming fiscal year.
Wonderful. Any comments or questions for manager?
I just want to say outstanding. I'm very happy that we are able to make that move to increase these salaries. I feel real good that we have to expect other industries to raise up their salary to help support our families, and we are leading the charge.
Perfect. Any additional comments or questions?
To say least, I am overly excited. And so as the gentleman addressed in the presentation for the rental development, we have been talking about workforce housing, been talking about ability of housing. And so now we're putting where our mouth is, that we are affording our workforce the opportunity to be able to become home owners and not just renter or lessees. And so that's important, because as Commissioner Atkinson Williams has just stated, we are leading the charge, and we are being the example of what that looks like in the city when we're saying We want our first responders. We want our workforce to be able to live or play here in the city of Brunswick. We have now stepped up the plate and we are knocking it out of the park so that we are showing that it can be done and that we do want to retain them, how vital they are, not just to helping us keep up the city, but to actually consider sit in the city and being a part of the work life here as well as the social life here in the city of Brunswick. So for me, it's well overdue. I'm happy.
And I want to just make a comment in regard to our housing program, which you all have been very supportive of. Well, is one of our components of that will be to work with our city employees and people who work for the city to ensure that they have every opportunity to move into one of the renovated or reconstructed homes they have, and also have an education component to help them through that process, them understand, the impacts and that kind of thing. And I'm excited about just being able to, I really want to see our first person, City of Brunswick employee house that we renovate. So that's one of our goals as well.
So we can get one of these on Reynolds Street.
Yeah.
Right.
And we can afford to live in it, and maintain it, be a part of it. So people are talking about the AMI and all of this, Taylor, I think we have brought that AMI up for at least city workforce anyway.
Thank you.
Okay. Commissioner Rowe?
No, I was gonna make them.
Okay. The only thing I say is, I think you said it, out of the 49 employees to them, Public Works, I just want to take the time to say thank you to our public department. I remember there was a hurricane coming in and Roll and I out there throwing out sandbags, bringing sandbags to an individual, and right beside us almost at every stop was our public guys. Work through hurricanes. They were always at the end of First Fridays, always at the end of every festival we have, putting up barricades, breaking them down. They do it quietly, oftentimes without thanks, oftentimes far too early in the morning for anybody to say something to them, far too late at night for us to say thank you. So I want to publicly say thank you. Thank you to them for allowing us the time to catch up, to be able to not pay them their value, but to at least inch closer toward. So I'm thankful for their work in our city. With that, we'll open it for a motion.
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to approve the fund for pay adjustment recommended by the city manager.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second. All those in favor, sign of aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. Thank you, Manager.
Thank you.
We will now move on to consider approval to allow city staff to submit funding application for rural workforce housing grant and construction loan financing to be applied at rental cottages development. We don't have a name beside, but what I'll do is say for those who weren't, we had a very open and robust discussion with the entity that thinking about moving forward or is moving forward with this project during our work session. I'd like to thank for their time and their availability to come have this broader conversation with us. I will just say this before we open it up for conversation or comment. It would, to me, that as this project continues to move forward, it will be something that will have to be done hand in hand, city. It not only affects an area of town that is of importance to all of us as we seek to have a housing program redeveloped in the area, rehab going on in the area, the thought of how we redevelop, think about Albany Street and the like. And this opportunity for me seems like the ability for us to be able to draw on state dollars to invest in our community. That oftentimes is a very difficult thing to get done. It is very difficult to work through all of those hoops and hurdles. And that said, I respect what my fellow commissioners have and the fact that And I will say myself included, this has been a project that while we have touched pieces of it, I think to maybe the first time we saw the totality of its nature, or able to wrap our minds around the totality of its nature. However, do understand that there will still be several times that the organization, those who are work project, will have to come before this city commission and work with us as it moves forward. And so what I assume is that this isn't, whether we decide to do or not do this evening, isn't the only intersectionality we will have with this project. And it also won't be the last time that we're able to, I think, give input to the group about what we want to see done on that footprint. That being said, I understand that, and I'll throw it to Commissioner Savy here. I understand that you all, whether we decide to do it here or not, you all have an entity that could sponsor you all moving forward. The question that I've inside of is, if that was the route chosen, if you had to go route, the property still need to be deeded to the city at that point, or would you to the other entity? Okay, so if we are signers here, then that property won't be to us as the sponsor. It will be deeded to, what would the other entity be?
The other entity, other qualifying entity and any authority, so that could be the Downtown Development Authority, Golden Isles Development Authority.
Okay,
example.
so whatever authority that this parcel of property will be, and be deeded to that authority, and they would work it that way. As I see it, if we deeply care about accessibility, which I do, if we deeply care about price point, and realistic price points for affordability, which I do, and if we care about definitely the makeup of the infrastructure that will be a footprint deeply inside of the city, which I do, I think it behooves us for us to stay as connected to this project moving forward as possible. And with that, I'll open it up for comments or questions. Commissioner Savy, I'm happy for you to lead off.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I would just like to say that I thought the work session was very productive this noon, and I would like to declare that I do have a conflict of interest on this issue on agenda. As the executive director for Brunswick, I will be stepping from this vote and the discussion. Happy to step out of the room if that makes you fellow commissioners more comfortable. But do know that respect that, and excited to hear the rest of the commission's direction moving forward.
Perfect. Additional comments, questions, considerations? Hearing none, we will open it for a motion. I want to walk us through what happens if no motion is put forward. The mayor cannot motion forward. I would not. I want my commission to be holistic favor of us moving forward with anything. So if there is no motion put forward, City Clerk Atkinson or Attorney Corey, I just wanted us to make clear publicly what happens when that happens.
It would not be brought to a vote, so the item would die.
Perfect. All right. Again, I will open it for any motion. Leave it open for about seconds. Hearing no motion, this measure dies.
What? Oh.
No.
Okay. Are we able to have an executive session that we can talk about it among commission and
Within-
possibly do a special meeting or something so that we can really know what we're understanding and confident and comfortable in moving in, we're moving in.
We are acquiring land. I'd need to do a little research on that to give an answer. I'd hate to give an answer on the fly at the moment. If it were possible, it certainly would be discussed at a special call meeting in an executive session, voted on afterwards. If it truly fits within the acquisition of, I would leave it at that.
And when is the, that this must be turned into the state?
April 12th.
Okay. If we were to decide to, because the organization has other routes that they can take to complete the application, if we were to take the lane of deferring so that we could have a broader conversation, I would just want to make sure for the purposes of the organization moving, we put in very locked in dates certain, so it gives them ample time to move forward in another direction if they need to. I want to say in totality, I won't say I'm in favor of the complete project. You know, the numbers and affordability and accessibility is something I would love to have broader conversation with the entity about. Understand the median income that most people in Brunswick are bringing home, and we want to make sure that not only that there are rental options, but buying options well for those in those categories. With that being said, if there's a motion put forward to defer, I want to ensure we at least defer something this week, open it up for them forward. If not, I say we move forward with no motion, which allow them to move forward to another entity. Now we'll open that for discussion or comment.
Mayor, you saying if deferred to complete this week? You mean Thursday or Friday?
Yeah, if we were going to defer, we can't go into the week. It has to be something that over the next couple of days, we all get in a room with individuals from staff, and they meet with us one-on-one or two-on-two or what it is, and give us the totality of that information so that we put together a special call meeting quickly so that they can move forward on the action. April 12th is being closed.
And how much notification, help me out, clerk, for 24 call? Special call. Special call?
Mr. Corey, is it okay for me to make a call?
I mean, I think we're still in the discussion phase.
If you don't mind, Mr. Again, really respect everybody's feedback and attentiveness to details. As their mayor mentions, an opportunity for explore a partnership with another entity. That has just been at a high level discussion phase. Again, as you have alluded to or expressed concern about, there would be a need to go in front of another board, them up to speed, and make them comfortable voting for or against them being the said applicant for this potential grant. So realistically, executing that a 1 week time will be a challenge. The second thing I'd like to remind my fellow commissioners is that this, and Mr. Please jump in and correct me if I'm wrong, this motion does not bind the city to anything other than applying for funding. So if we awarded this grant as a city, the city still has the opportunity, will have to come back before this commission to those funds, how those funds will be used. So my interpretation of this motion and this agenda item is it does bind us to any other than giving our city staff permission to apply funds to be applied for the project at cottages.
Commissioner Savy, so if you all apply and awarded this grant, we have to, in terms of if we're going to be responsible or willing to continue the partner. And then if we don't accept the partnership, then you still be back at square one as an application.
Can you just say that one more time and make sure I'm clear?
So we go through, that we approve that you apply.
That the city applies.
That the city applies.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, city apply. And your particular organization with the city, that partner is awarded grant. Then you have to come back to the commission, we're gonna accept funds.
That is correct, and there would be, we would need to have an executive session, we would need to, because we would need to deed over the said prop that would be allocated, the infrastructure, so there's multiple other.
And we have an
legal docs and agree-
opportunity to deny that we do not want to continue the partnership, correct? At the time of the award, assuming that it was awarded.
If it was awarded, you could choose to turn the funds to the state. Or choose to continue to proceed. The awarding of the funds are based on the workforce housing development on the Reynolds block. So those specs and the type and makeup is what qualifies us for potentially funds.
So if we decide at the time after the funds are awarded to send it to the state, you will be back to square one. Your organization will be back to square one. And of course, another partnership to a partner or someone to sponsor you to get to apply for the application.
Yeah, at that point, there would be two options, my perspective. Option one would we look for alternative funding options to pay for infrastructure. Again, between $1.3 million or additional capital we need to acquire. That would be option one. Option two is I don't know if we would qualify again, if we would be able to reapply funds again. That's undetermined. I don't have an answer for that. And then also, this funding cycle goes through the end of June, which is this fiscal year. So we're assuming, and we've received information from DC, there's a potential this funding will continue, or this program, will continue in 2020, the next fiscal year. But as you know, with the state, no guarantee that that program will exist after the end of this fiscal year. So that's also part of the urgency with this application process.
And when you have to apply for this type of grant, do you have to apply for specific project? Just asking. Okay, so the specific project is No Street.
Be tied to workforce housing
Okay.
to show transformative workforce housing where the workforce housing need. And again, we're the light green on the map. It's one of the highest eligible, I guess you could say, the top tier, whatever you want to call it. Yes, it has to be to a workforce housing project.
Yeah, and again, recall the work session, they did do a site visit and it was specific to that rent property in terms of visiting that parcel.
But with that said, the infrastructures that is unified, the stormwater and other things will have a spider web type effect in that we would have two water lines and two new fire hydrants that, while would be in place to service 2400 Reynolds block, would also be in place to service all of the other surrounding properties in the area. So I do think I think the intent is similar to Mayor Pro Tem brought up Norwich Commons, and everyone is aware that the Norwich Commons are still there. This one, I think they're learning from what has been done in the past. Say, we're going to give you guidance on what you have to spend it on, where you have to spend it. If we're going to give grant funding, like Norwich Commons and set aside it for a project that's be transformative housing, now we are going to say those funds are going to be earmarked for the immediate block, and these are the infrastructure improvements that you can use it for. That makes sense.
That's all.
Where we did not have the guidance on that on Norwich Commons, and that's why it's in.
So it's already been mapped out the specific area in which those can be.
Right, it would have to be in the proximity of the workforce housing, meaning like a block, the immediate block, but it would also allow for that, like the paving of parking spots, the stormwater underneath the fire hydrants. Those are all eligible infra costs and better defined. They're not perfect. Nothing has been perfect in all these cycles, but they're better defined than they were when we went through the Norwich Commons.
You say proximity for me still is not definitive. But what do you, what's the defined area of the proximity? When
I
you
mean,
say-
the
'cause you just got
project.
maybe two blocks, a block.
One block out, one block north, one block east, west, you don't add that additional to.
No, yeah, I'm just trying to.
I mean, it'd have to have an immediate impact on the actual project. So stormwater improvements that are servicing the actual project, meaning the block that the new project, the new workforce housing is constructed on, where the discharge would be going. The fire hydrants being put in place, those will obviously positive effect to the area, of course, because they'll be able to utilize a fire close by, but they'd also be immediately tied to fire service on the actual block. It does contemplate broadband, and those other services. I know they're already being installed in certain areas of this, but types of services those types of infrastructure that would provide service directly to the block. And then, of course, there's an obvious extension of the service that are going to assist elsewhere. Like there is no stormwater drainage on that at the moment.
So the maximum award amount is 0.5.
Yes, ma'am.
Out of that 2.5, are there the estimate that entire 2.5 mil consumed for the infrastructure of it? If not, what's the amount of the city's responsibility as the cost of the infrastructure?
The city has no financial responsibility.
Okay, I know you said that.
We would accept it. It would be new infrastructure. And so the idea of the acceptance and taking it for 5 years, this would be the understood. New infrastructure should not need a great deal of maintenance. City would accept it for 5 years. When I looked at this, my view would be that you dedicate it at the end of the 5 years, dedicate the water and sewer to joint water and sewer. The city probably want to retain the stormwater improvements for the purpose of the stormwater fund and the utility. And obviously the project paying into the stormwater utility. So I think that the city would probably want to retain that, and it would basically leave that middle, correct.
Of that.
That's right.
That the city would be responsible for.
Or to deed back.
Or to deed back. And I guess to further that question, when I said responsibility, we would be responsible for the disbursement payment of that's not, that, I guess that's really what I was kind of getting around to.
Yes, that's my
We're
understanding.
Receiving the funds, so we're gonna be responsible for pay whoever does for the infrastructure. The monies are gonna be in our coffer.
That's correct. And the contractors would be, through the city, through our fee, just like we do everything normally. And it would have to come in front of our committee to approve the bid and all that.
So we would be responsible totally for the acceptance of the monies. We would be responsible for the disbursement of funds, payment of contracts related to the work or the infrastructure or the building of that infrastructure.
That's right. I mean, I think it's structured in that manner so that you don't have substandard infrastructure being installed, the use of these grant funds.
The city, which would Public Works, which would be Garrow, would be responsible for RFPs, securing or procuring the contractors. The city would be responsible or liable for the entirety of the procurement process.
Right. So when it says matched, right, that's right.
Which, in essence, that's the man hours. That's the cost, our employees doing the work, that right there. So even though it's a cost, but there is a cost.
I mean, yeah,
Mhm.
I'm not sure how budget for the grant is, but they're making for administration tied into it, which would pay the people to administer
That,
the process.
that is correct. Actually, the pre-qualification letter that we got back saying to apply for the full, the whole application process, indicated that if we were awarded the grant dollars, any expenses incurred after March 12th, when we read that letter, be eligible for reimbursement.
and I
Although-
think that's the same structure that Dee's put in place, for example, on the programs that Roxanne George is administering through the Disaster Relief Fund. And she tracks and the city is reimbursed costs related to her role in administering those grants.
And
Go ahead.
track the hours, the manpower for us for this application.
The employee would, like when we did the clean community grant for Keep Golden Isles Beautiful, I tracked my time and then submit on the form with my hours and it was reimbursed.
So it would be John and Garrow, and then I guess, anything else?
I would anticipate, and city manager, you can jump in, that potentially Mr. Tinman as well, our project manager
Project
and things
manager,
like that.
okay.
But again, yet to be determined.
So, because when we're talking about a piece about accepting, not accepting, really, I mean, that's why I wanted us to really be able to kind of discuss a little bit more, because if we talking about accepting something, and then we have a discussion and say, nah, we don't want to accept it, that's not a good look. That's not a good look forward to, in the future, in applications for other potential projects or what have you, to say, well, yeah, we decided we want to accept it now, but after a little bit more conversation, I had no responsibility of accepting it. So that's why I asked, we could potentially have additional couple of days, whatever to give that careful thought that if we're gonna say, no, we don't want to accept it, we don't accept it. That's clean. To say, yes, we're gonna accept it. We've had discussion, we're comfortable with whatever, and that's clean. That's why I feel. But, I mean, I'm with whatever they say.
After hearing the discussion, a couple things. One, any sort of bringing money from the state in whatever form, it takes work of our staff. Our staff has to, whether it's the man to write the grant, the man hours to let's use Howard Coffin Park for an example. Our staff members are going into getting that project done. So that to me is very normal. And often grants come with the ability to repay that staff. And so that's an important thing for me to consider. I am, again, anytime people work to bring home state dollars, these are dollars. This is $2.6 million that will be going from other community. This is $2.6 million that will go to some other city that needs to somehow do the hard work to figure out housing on all different scales. And it seems to me that this seems like a hand glove approach to work with the municipality, deeding the land, ensuring that infrastructure, as never heard this word, but City Attorney Corey had said it has a spider web effect. And so I, to me, overarchingly, I would be hard pressed to see a reason to send $2.6 million to another community. And that's not guaranteed that we, receive the dollars. But I know that City Manager McDuffie has done an amazing job ensuring that somebody working on grants day in and day out. And those grants come into our community. It is at least my thought, we do our best to find a way to really recreate those dollars, get those dollars back home. So I'm in full agreement, Mayor Pro Tem. I know we've done meetings a lot, so we understand is to get some more information, have a special called and all of that done. I'm amenable and open to that, but do overarchingly believe that sending those dollars to another committee doesn't make sense for Brunswick. And I understand there are more discussions, full discussions that will need to be had with Brunswick, their leadership, the accessibility, affordability,
Right.
openness to the community, what makes for Brunswick. I don't believe signing on to this precludes them having any of those conversations. And, I personally think if they were to go to another entity and we'd be in a far worse position to have those other conversations with the entity because it would be privately held land and the entity administered the $2 million wouldn't be us. So we wouldn't be in the purse string. We wouldn't be able to have a conversation with those doing the work. We wouldn't be able to have a broader conversation about minority owned, how many you got working for, all the kind of questions we ask through our normal procurement process. We kind of wouldn't have that contingency of control, which having this kind of contingency of control with us being a partner in it inside of our city seems to make the most sense just to me. I fully understand needing more time to really take this in because as I said, tonight was my fun seeing the presentation. I didn't go on any of the work trips. I have any broad conversations or any conversations at all with Forward Brunswick. I do know it takes a lot of work to ensure that that kind of funnels into project here in our city. And, I understand people on the committee disagree with the holistic nature of the project. If that's the case, then, I understand why someone wouldn't want to put their vote out. But if there's an understanding that the holistic project would be good or has value, then I definitely want us to be connected to it as much as possible.
Mr. Mayor, if we could meet, well, just twofold. We could meet Friday morning, but if not, I'm gonna go ahead and make a motion.
I'm open for whenever anyone wants to meet. I think Mayor Pro.
About time that's it to
Mhm.
vet more information for us to.
I think Mayor Pro Tem, she's available. And I think just so I'm sure for them to be able to get information to us, that wouldn't be a work session. They would have to meet with us 2-on-2 or 1-on-1, correct? That's correct. So they'd have to meet with us in smaller groups.
Oh, so not the call meeting, the 24 hours?
I would think tomorrow they would work to meet with us individually and walk through all of the questions that they may have. And that would allow City Atkinson to either call a meeting for Friday or Monday. And that's before the 12th, right?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, and I would caution, I mean, thinking this through, I don't believe this could be something that could be discussed in executive session. I know land acquisition is a part of it, but it's not the actual act of acquiring it at the
Right.
time, just the submission application. So just as, trying to think this out, just giving it off the fly, I would caution that I doubt it's going to be able to be in executive session.
I would agree to that.
And Mr. Mayor, if the decision is, if the will of the commission is to have a follow-up meeting, I would just ask that we get extremely direction on what additional information and questions need to be answered. A short time frame, I want to make sure that we're prepared appropriately, answer any of those concerns. And so that could be a potential issue.
Are there any questions that haven't been asked, since we've been up here? Because this could have all been prevented, and it was meant, we got, we saw it, but we requested to have these one-on-one or these two-on-one meetings, and we wouldn't be here at this moment going through all of this in a tight spot, right? And I do everything that everyone said, and what Mayor said, when it's a grant, you're like giving money to another community, right? And we want to see housing here, we want to see it grow. We want to see people become homeowners and be able to live affordable. But I mean, it is a grant. We're not guaranteed to grant. I'm not available to meet Friday, not available to meet next.
Well,
I'll,
Mayor
has-
Pro Tem?
I wrote down a couple of things, so if need be, if it necessitates that we just knock this out now, well, I don't have a problem with it. So this would be my expectation, is, to develop the pros and the cons of what we're addressing. Understanding the process, understanding the fulfillment of the need, and the city of Brunswick's level of input when it comes to this total project. And I think the mayor kind of addressed that as to, how does that look? We say yes tonight, we're gonna go ahead. We don't want free money off of the table. I'm with, so when you go to talk, when you go to take him to place in those explanations and those understandings, that forward. I don't, we wouldn't have been here if we had that information already. If we had already had a clear understanding of the total impact, I don't think this would be as debatable as it has been. We didn't get that information. We didn't know. So now we have been all of this time extending an agenda that only had 9 items on it to go through all of this, which a valuable time. But so now to understand, okay, free money, city is not out of time. 2.5 million is maximum potential, not guaranteed,
No, that's right.
but maximum potential. 2.5 million, we could approximate to doing something that needs to be done in the city. Okay, I'm say no to that. It's free money. Who would say no to free money? Understanding the intricacies of this plan, how that plan looks, the level of input that this committee had to do its fiduciary responsibility. We have that responsibility. Just because Fort Brunswick is proposing to develop these homes, we still have a fiduciary responsibility to our constituents to make sure that there is an affordability to those who have the desire to purchase or be homeowners, or to the ability to live in whatever they live in. So having that knowledge, understanding that we still, how does that look going forward? What would the city's input when it actually moves beyond just the infrastructure? That's where I need to be brought up to speed at. We know we're gonna control the infrastructure, not want to control this project, but what is our level and the extent of our input into assuring as we can there is equitability across the board for workforce housing, trying to address another gap of affordability, and how does that for us going forward? That's my concern. So I say yes to the, if we free money, we ain't out of nothing. But then I don't want us to get to a point, it's not a good that we say we want it, we're gonna take the money, then we won't give it back. No, that's not look going forward. And I can assure you, having been a federal employee, that's not a look going forward. So whatever we decide tonight, we need to make sure that we ain't all even have to be on the same, but we have level of agreeing to disagree. And how does that look beyond just our able to have that input over the infrastructure? How do we move forward in this process?
Commissioner Savy, can you answer Mayor Pro Tem, was the impact that the city would have in the development?
Well, the willingness of this commission, I would go to speak for my board that we've always envisioned this project as a partnership, city and our residents. And I think we've been very clear with our objective for defining whether or not this project is a success in the realm of providing affordable workforce for our diverse community, specifically targeting, the service industry, our first responders, our teachers and education system. I anticipate, again, with the will of the commission and our continued partnership, we will all can to still have a seat at that table and be involved in that discussion process. I will say that this is a nonprofit organization taking on this project. That does, the numbers have to make sense. The project has to be self-sustaining, for lack of a better word. We cannot go, in the negative for a construction project and then for Brunswick, bald, right, and go belly up, because that would, again, not a goal of continuing to be able to provide housing and other activity that we do as an organization. But to answer the question, again, if it's the willingness of this commission, and I think this decision will speak towards that, as the mayor has pointed out, if the city wants to partner in this, continue to be a partner as they have so far, we encourage everyone's seat at the table.
And one last question, is there an opportunity for Brunswick to apply for additional grant funding, just add on top of?
That's a great
I'm trying to
question.
think of something to.
Nope,
'cause-
that's a great
yeah.
question. There's a second portion of this rural workforce housing initiative that was included in your packet that was not presented on or discussed today and is not on our agenda. The component of their initiative or program is construction financing loan. And so that's up to $1 million. And Forward Brunswick would have to bring 60% to the table. That 1 million, maximum of 1 million, could only be 40% of the project. And then that loan amount would be repaid to DCA in 24 months. If that second application was applied for, we were granted those funds. We had 24 months to complete the construction of the homes and repay that loan back.
So, I'll have the template of more equity to ensure this project forward.
Yes, ma'am.
And so the construction part of it, you would do another application to secure that. Okay, all right.
Yeah, and the
okay.
difference with the additional thing about the construction financing is a rolling application. There's no deadlines or anything like that. So there's no, they do the infrastructure grants on a few-month cycle. The construction loan can pretty much be applied for at any point in the process, the development process.
Okay, so this is where I'm at now. I'm good with going forward with the applicant for the initial infrastructure part of this. The second phase is the construction part of it, which they'll have to do another application to go after that other $1,000. That's free money too, right? No, that's payment. Y'all
Now
got
get back.
Y'all
Now
got to pay part
we
of it
gotta
back.
pay it back,
Okay.
but all the grants that or all the loans they've issued far have 0% interest, but that's not in writing. They have each applicant they evaluate individually and, you know, assign an interest rate.
Okay, so first part on money, second part, Fort Brunswick is responsible for paying that money back. Okay, but then there's still other opportunities, USDA, these other homeowner programs that could potentially defray costs that could potentially for construction. Okay, let's
And
move.
that's
We
what
got
I
it.
mentioned too, the lower
That's
construction zone.
that's what I make
All
sure.
right.
Good. One thing before, we all in agreement. But don't want the conversation to stop here on this. Tonight, I think every single commission saw buying prices and rental prices for the first. We understand that 501c3s and those who work in this space need to remain solvent. We in no way want them to not be solvent and moving forward. However, doing the hard work to find the 3 to 5, 10 real opportunities that move outside the base profit model is something that I will be looking for as this is forward. The reason being is if you are in a nonprofit space, I'm not to say that I don't want the work that you do to be a winner, but I want you to choose the times where you're being a loser for the greater good. And if it's taking 1 or 2 of the buyable property available under market rate, because you understand that's what it takes to get someone in the home, give them their first opportunity, then let's do the work to do that. And let's not just put it down on the base construction kind of profit model, because we're gonna make sure we're fighting for our people. So,
And as a 35-year IRS employee, understanding the difference between nonprofit and not-for-profit, there's a big difference. So moving forward, when we throw out the terminology of nonprofit, we have to understand what leads us to of how we look at that from the IRS or the IRC's perspective. So if we're gonna nonprofit, we're gonna be nonprofit. If we're gonna be not-for-profit, we're gonna not-for-profit. So there's a difference between those. One can make profit, one is expected to do just what it says it's gonna do, be a nonprofit and not a not-for-profit. So just plugging that in.
perfect. Thank you for the work. Thank you to my fellow listeners for working through it and really asking some really questions. Open it for a motion.
I move to allow city staff to submit an application for rural workforce housing grant and construction loan financing to apply at the Reynolds Cottages development.
Hearing a
Second.
hearing a first and all those in favor, show by aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. And please note, show that Commissioner Saby did not
Abstain.
abstain that vote. Executive session? Perfect. We will now have a motion to adjourn for executive session.
Motion to adjourn executive.
Second.
Hearing a first and a second, all those in favor, show by sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We are adjourned. We have returned from executive session and no actions or votes were taken. We'll now open it for to adjourn.
I move that we adjourn.
Hearing the first, do I hear a second? Hearing first and a second, all those in favor by sign of aye. Aye. All those opposed, the same. Hearing none, the motion passes. We are adjourned.